One remote that could replace every single one in your house, and it doesn't even take batteries. That's what the SofaBaton X2 claims to do. I've been testing this alongside the optional IR repeater to see if it can actually replace all the remotes in my house, how well it works in day-to-day use, and whether it's worth spending your money on. Let's check it out. So inside the box you get the SofaBaton X2 remote, the main hub, a charging dock, some user manuals, power cables, and a couple of wired IR blasters. And then in a separate box you get the SofaBaton IR Repeater. And this is meant to extend the infrared signals to areas the main hub can't reach. And inside this you get user manual, the IR Repeater, which looks really cute and it's about the size of a tennis ball. Then you've got the power adapter, USB to Type-C cable, and a 3-meter IR blaster. We'll come back to this later because it's actually quite an important part of the setup, especially if your devices are scattered or all over the place. First impressions, this feels really good. It's got an all-metal build with some plastic leather-like pattern on the back. So on the top you've got a power off button, then you've got a screen where you can control the devices and the rest of the settings. And just under that screen you have two other touch buttons which work as a back button and one for your favorite device. Under that you've got a directional pad, back button, home button, and all the buttons you expect on a normal remote. Then at the back you've got a textured leather-like pattern which isn't only for looks, it actually helps you get a better grip. At the bottom you've got the charging contacts for the included dock, and that's one of my favorite reasons for having this, because having batteries on a normal remote, it's an absolute killer. Most remotes take AAA batteries, and when you put them together, even 5 remotes can take up to 10 batteries, which in the long run can cost you a lot of money. So having a rechargeable remote basically sells it for me. And also in the middle you have a Type-C port. And the interesting thing here is you can't actually control the screen with the rest of the buttons on the remote. So when you want to select something on the screen itself, like choosing a device or choosing an activity, you have to use your finger to press those things, and using the buttons on the remote simply don't work. The screen has decent brightness, you can control it from 5% all the way to 100. I've literally been using this on 10%, so you can tell how bright that actually is, and it would work in even a sunny lit room. The charging dock itself looks fairly simple. It comes in this silverish color with a Type-C port on the back. It holds the remote at a slight angle, which isn't only sturdy but also makes it look aesthetically pleasing. Now the remote control, as good as it is, doesn't control everything on its own. The main part of the system is actually this hub. The hub connects to your home network and then sends commands to your devices using infrared, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and supported smart home integrations. And that's what gives the X2 much more flexibility than a normal universal remote. The SofaBaton X2 is designed to bring all those controls in a single place. What you want to do first is go ahead and download the SofaBaton app, which you can find on the iOS or Play Store. Once you download the app, you'll need to create or sign into your account, then follow the instructions to connect the hub to your Wi-Fi network. The app will take you through the whole process because there are quite a few steps involved, so this isn't just a remote that you can take out the box and start using. You'll need to spend quite some time adding your devices, testing the commands, and setting everything up before you're ready to go. You search for the type of device you want, choose the brand, and then select the model or test the available commands that you can set. For common brands and devices, the app should already have a control profile available. If the exact model isn't listed or some of the buttons don't work properly, you can teach the X2 commands using your original remote. You point the original remote towards the hub, press the button you want to copy, and then assign that command inside the app. And that's why this remote is so good. It gives you much more flexibility with older devices or uncommon brands that aren't well known. The main feature though is activities. This is where the X2 starts to feel more than just a remote replacement. Instead of controlling each device separately, you can create an activity that controls your whole setup at once. So usually at night when I turn on my fan, I do have to set a timer for around 3 to 4 hours so it can turn off during the night when I'm asleep. But now I can replace that with an activity on the SofaBaton X2. And that's the real benefit of having a remote like this. It's not just having all the remotes in one place, it's actually giving them much more functionality and giving you much more flexibility in how you control your devices. The only downside is that does take a bit of time to initially set up, so when you first get this you will have to spend some time setting everything up, and that can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours depending on how many devices you have. So trial and error is the way to go. You have to test every single command, make sure it works before you have the final result. So what I'm now going to do is use the remote control from my fan and connect that to the X2. You can see we have the existing devices. Add device, select the type of device. So You can now search in the database or click learning. So the fan isn't a well-known brand, so we'll continue with learning, and then you can select the type of device. So now it's asking if my remote control has separate buttons for the on and off. In this case, you can see it has a power off button and a power on, so that's separate keys. And now you can assign those keys to these buttons. So let's go with the power on button, learn that, and it's going to ask me to press the power button and point it to the hub. So let's just go ahead and do that. So power on, click it once, and there we go, that's now on. And now what you can do is test these. So if I just click this now, that should turn the fan on. And same with the power off. So now that's working exactly as expected, and you can use the rest of these buttons to assign the rest of these buttons exactly how you want. And now you can see the bedroom fan has been added to my devices. Now if you head over to the remote, you can see it already synced that setting and it was successful. So now if you head to the devices on the remote, you can see one of the options is the bedroom fan. If you go ahead, we can see those two buttons already on there. So now if we use these buttons, it should automatically turn the fan on and off. So let's try that. So you can see the fan has now turned on, and again, turn off. Now I've deleted my smart TV from the device list just so I can show you how easy it is to add it back in. So press the plus icon, then head into Wi-Fi in this case, and here you can see it's already scanning the local area and it sees Roku as one of the options. So I'll go ahead with that, and it's already given it a name. Let's just change the color to something like dark blue, leave the icon as it is, control mode is Wi-Fi, and click complete. And as soon as that completes, you'll see it start to sync on the remote control. So it should start to sync any minute now. And that's how simple it is to add some devices that already exist in the SofaBaton library. But for something like an infrared or Bluetooth, the process is a little more complex, but the way the app guides you through those steps makes it more than easy to follow. And as you can see from the testing, there's quite a difference between an infrared remote and a Wi-Fi remote. So testing it with the remote control from the fan, you can see there is a slight lag when using the SofaBaton X2 compared to the original remote, where you can quickly cycle between different options. With this, there is a slight delay. It's very minimal, but the delay is still noticeable compared to the TV remote, which was working exactly the same. So all in all, I think this is an incredible device for what it does for you. Currently for me, it's controlling 8 devices through a single remote, and I can keep adding to that up to a maximum of 50. Now, in the midst of all that, the IR repeater is going to be really useful if you want to use the remote control and the devices are scattered across the house, because you're going to need the infrared signal to travel, and if they're not quite visible to the remote control, they're not going to work. So having something like the IR repeater, which almost acts as the middleman, is going to be super important. And speaking of signals, one thing you want to test with each device that you add is the IR emitter. So in the settings, you'll have two options. One is the X2 hub and one is the remote control. Now, if you select remote control, anytime you use the remote control, you will have to point it at that device and it would have to be in close range. If you select the X2 hub, so the X2 hub is basically sending that signal instead of the remote control. So that's something worth testing to see what works best for you, because each device will be different. Now let me show you how you can add activities for these devices. Press the plus icon in the top right, select the device you want to add an activity on. I'm just going to go ahead with the bedroom fan. Just keep clicking next until you get to the end. Give the activity a name, give this a color and an icon, and click complete. And now what you want to do is head into the activity settings, and in the top right you can see edit, click that. Now you have some settings for this device. So you have customize buttons, then you have the macro and favorite keys, and this is where everything comes together. So you have two options here. One is add key and the other is add macro. Adding the key is simple. It's basically assigning a command to a device like power on. So let's go ahead and add two commands, power on and power off. And then let's go ahead and add a macro. This is where you can add multiple steps. So a fan turns on and the timer is set to 3 hours. Let's add a macro button name, turn on and set to 3 hours. And then go ahead with adding the steps. First step, power on, confirm that. Next step, timer, and you want to repeat this 6 times. And what's interesting is you can add delays between these from a minimum of 0 seconds to a maximum of 127 seconds. So I'm just going to go ahead with the 0 seconds because there's really no need for any delay on the fan. But if this was something for the TV, I know the TV takes around 3 to 4 seconds just to turn on. So for that, I would have to add a delay of 5 seconds, then the next command. Once you're done, you basically click test and you can see if the fan is actually behaving the way you want it to behave. Now, one thing I find weird in the activity settings on the remote control is the fact that only one activity can be selected at a time. So for example, if I want to turn the bedroom fan on and also the TV, ideally you'd want to be able to do both. But in this case, I've only managed to be able to do only one. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but on the other activities, you can see the 3 arrows and you basically can't select them. The only way to select them is heading into the phone, clicking the activity, and once that's turned on, you can see the same happening on the remote control. Not sure why they've set it up this way by limiting it to only one activity, but it looks like a waste of a whole feature. And now we come to the price, which is hard to justify. The SofaBaton X2 on its own costs $329.99, which is a lot of money for a remote control. And if you want to get the SofaBaton X2 set, that would cost you $359.99. And the repeater on its own is $39.99. So looking at the prices of those, it's hard to justify spending that on a remote control. Now, I'm not going to decide whether that's too much or too less. It really depends on why it's needed for you. There might genuinely be a need for some people, in which case they can justify it for themselves. That's all for now. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!